right, welcome to another tutorial for USOR games. I'm particularly excited about this tutorial because we finally get a chance to actually get into the mechanics of the game, which is actually a fairly simple game mechanics. I know it looks very daunting and confusing with all these different stats floating around here on the character sheet, but really there's just only a few core rules to understand, and once you understand those, you can apply it to this game and to any game in our genre, because to any genre in our game system, because as the acronym stands for USOR, this is Universal Set of Rules. This will handle fantasy games and space games and modern day games, any kind of game. Basically, the central rules, the core behind the game is that characters are built on what's called character points, and you can see this sample character here, his character points up here, or CP, and the character points are used to spend on skills and attributes and abilities, and all of the attributes and in fact most of the skills and some of the abilities will have ratings in the game, and these ratings essentially will translate to a dice roll. And generally speaking, the higher the rating, the better. Because it gives you a better dice roll and better odds. And we're going to get into that in just a sec. But it's also important to note that ratings can be modified on certain circumstances, and that if the rating is modified, then that means consequently the dice roll associated with that is modified. So let's take, for example, this sample character I have here. You can see his strength, and then over here his current rating is 22. And like I said, that can be modified. Like, let's say that the character is hanging on the edge of a ledge. And the game master says, okay, well, because you're hanging on the edge of a ledge, you don't have very good leverage, your character's in an awkward position, you're not as strong as you normally would be, so I'm going to temporarily reduce your strength down to 17. So rating of 22 translates to a different dice roll than rating of 17. And the dice roll for any given rating that it translates to is always the same. So take a look here at endurance. See, endurance has a current rating of 23, and logic has a current rating of 23 as well. So they both have the same current rating. And what we've done on the character sheet is we have the translated dice rolls for the ratings already on the sheet for you, so you don't have to look them up. I'm going to show you how to look them up in just a sec, but in this case, if you don't need to, the dice rolls are right here. So if you notice, a rating of 23 translates to 2d6 and 1d8. Okay, now 2d6 and 1d8, that is for every game, for every system, for every situation. If a rating is 23, the dice roll is always going to be 2d6 and 1d8. So you can see down here, the logic rating currently is 23. That also says 2d6 and 1d8. So always, forever, a rating of 23 translates to 2d6 and 1d8. Okay? So if we look at, let's go back to strength. Our strength rating is 22. That translates to 1d12 and 1d20. So what we would need to do then is roll 1d12 and 1d20. Now, in our system, we have our little USOR bot here that can do automatic rolls for you. So if we want to use that, let's look at 22. That's 1d12, 1d20. So we need to type this in here if we want to use our digital dice roller. So they say USOR roll 1d12 plus 1d20. And we hit enter, and he gives us the results. We have a 4 and we have a 19. So now what does that mean, the 4 and the 19? Well, in our game, we don't add up dice, not in a traditional sense. There is essentially a success rating. Any dice roll that is a 4 or higher translates to one success. So and it can never be more than one success. So if you look at 1d12, we rolled a 4 here, and we look at 1d20, we rolled a 19 here. Now that translates to 2 successes. We had a success with this dice roll, and we had a success with this dice roll. But if this number were like a 3 or a 2, or this number would be a 1, those would not be successes. And let's say that the character is having an arm wrestling match with another character, okay? So the game master would say, all right, so you're going to have to make a strength, what's called an event roll, which is what we just had. You're going to have to make an event roll at rating 22, and see how many successes you get. So the character who's rolling this rolled the dice roll for rating 22 and got these two results, so that character has 2 successes. So what if there's a rival character? Well, okay, the person that this character is arm wrestling, let's say maybe they have a strength of like 19. Okay, so they're not as strong. Well, then we would use the event roll table to look up what a strength of 19 translates to in dice roll terms. So to do that, you would go on to our supplemental channel here, and then here is our event chart. You can download this. And just for ease of game use, I would recommend printing this out on a printer. You can instead keep it as a separate tab in your browser if you want to do that instead. But this basically shows you the dice roll translation. So the blue column represents the rating, and then the orange and the yellow columns represent the dice that need to be rolled. So I think we said earlier, I can't remember, I think it was 19 we said that the rivals arm wrestling was. So we have 1d8 here and 1d20. That's what that translates to. So then we would go back here and go back to our game room, and we would type USOR roll 1d8 plus 1d20. Okay? So now, what did we get for this one? We got a 5 and we got a 20. That translates to 2 successes. Why? Again, because each roll was 4 or higher. Let's try another roll just to give you an example. Let's say that the person had a much lower strength. Let's go with something even lower, like let's go with something really bad, like 9. If this person had a 9 rating on strength, they're only going to get to roll 1d4 and 1d12. So we go back here, USOR, roll 1d4 plus 1d12. Okay, and you see here we have a 3 and we have a 1 that resulted. So how many successes is that? The answer is 0, because both of these rolls ended up being under 4. So let's compare it to our character earlier who had the strength of 22 and ends up rolling the 5 and the 20, right? So that person had the 4 and the 19. So our character had 2 successes, but his opponent, who had a really weak strength, had 0 successes. So that means that in the arm wrestling match, this character won over this character because he had 2 successes over the target. And what we call that is number of successes over target, or NOST, N-O-S-T. It's an acronym. And that's important for determining certain abilities and effects. So the higher your NOST rating is, the better you do. So if you end up with a NOST of 0, meaning you and your opponent roll the same number of successes, like your opponent rolls 3 successes, you roll 3 successes, you have a NOST of 0, that's generally a stalemate. That means that if you're arm wrestling, neither person is budging. If you roll a NOST of 1, meaning you had 1 more success than your target, that's generally considered barely a win. In which case you would win, but just barely make it. Like, you win him in the arm wrestling contest, but it was a struggle. You just barely did it. But if you had like a NOST of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, the higher up it goes, you do that much better. I mean, if you get like a NOST of 5 against someone in arm wrestling, you just decimated that person. I mean, you basically ripped their arm off, so to speak. I mean, it's like no contest. And that's really a lot of the core mechanics of the game here, is that you get a rating, you convert it to a dice roll, you find out how many successes you have, you compare those successes against your opponent, and then depending on who has the higher number of successes and depending on the NOST score, that will affect the outcome. Yeah, and it's important to note, too, that you would have these rival roles against not just other characters, but events as well, hence the title Event Roll. So let's go back to our sample character here. He's got an agility of 30. And let's say that he's crossing a bridge and the game master says, hey, there's a bunch of rocks falling towards you. You have to dodge out of the way. So because he's on a bridge and it's kind of wobbly, let's say that he gets a -3 penalty and his rating has gone from 30 to 27. And let's say that the falling rocks have a rating of 40 because they're moving pretty fast. So we would make rival rolls of 27 versus 40, and whoever got the higher successes wins. If the player gets the more successes, then he dodges the rocks. If the rocks get the more successes, then he gets hit by the rocks. And if the rocks get a lot more successes, then it's going to do a lot more damage to the character and be much more detrimental to the story. So so if the agility has been reduced from 30 to 27, we look on our event chart here. And 27 translates to 3d8, so we say USOR, roll 3d8. And, wow, lucky us, we got 3 successes. And then I think we said the boulder had a 40, so 40 translates to 3d8 plus 1d10, slightly better. So USOR, roll 3d8 plus 1d10. Let's see if he gets hit by the rocks. All right, well, it's a tie. So we had the boulder get 3 successes and 1 failure, so that translates to 3 versus 3. It's a tie. So the game master can translate that however. It would probably mean that the boulders didn't really hurt the character, but made him stumble and probably damage the bridge somewhat. But he probably just barely made it out. That's for the game master to call on. But that's it. And also, if just a word of advice too, if you don't want to use the USOR bot, we are planning to improve our rolling feature so we can integrate the rating and the dice roll all in one button. So all you have to do is punch in the rating, and then it will translate a dice roll for you, and you just click roll, and it does it. So we're gonna later on have a more advanced version of the digital roller. But of course, if you don't like that, you can always do the old-fashioned dice rolling by hand and then get the answer like that using the event chart. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and the next one on how to play the game will be how to run a battle. So this one should cover most of the storytelling aspects of the game, but the battle part is a little bit more involved, so we'll need a separate video for that, and I hope to see you in that one. Until then, happy gaming.